I reached in this bowl and another hand comes in and it reaches down. And so I look up just to see who's on the other end of the hand. And it's Jeff Goldblum. And he's about this far from my face. And he goes,
Join us as we get weird and bring you the Chronicles of Lynette Eklund.
How to tweak fur on Teddy Ruxpin became a raptor later.
This is where the stories roll. The Chronicles of podcast.
Ladies and gentlemen, nays and M's, this week's guest is an absolute legend in the world of creature design and special effects. This week's guest has spent the past 30 years creating magic on projects like Honey, I Blew Up the Kids, Jurassic Park, Lost World, and even the upcoming Mandalorian and Grogu. She's the master of foam, fur, fabric, and feathers. So everyone join us as we get weird and bring you the Chronicles of Lynette Eklund.
Very nicely done.
Thank you. I had to get weird in there somewhere.
Lynette, before we dive in, how has your Tuesday treated you so far? What have you been doing yourself?
I'm always busy. I'm always working. I'm always writing. I'm always doing everything all at once. So things are going well, though. You know,
Good.
life is good.
That's what we like to hear.
It's always good to be busy.
It is.
It's funny. When I've been doing my research on you, I was like, she does so much. How many plates and how many kitchens is this woman spinning at one time? It is mental.
Well, I'm kind of mental.
Aren't we all?
I've never been one that if it sounds like it's going to be fun, I can't say no. So I figure as long as I'm allowed to eat while I'm working and I can get 7 hours of sleep, the rest of it's up for grabs. So, you know.
I love that mindset. That's great. Like, maximize your minutes, as they say. I like that.
Exactly. You know, in the original Roadhouse, you know, it's like, well, I'll sleep when I'm dead, you know?
Yeah.
Yes. So, Lynette, how we like to start these things, we like to take it right back to childhood. Little Miss Lynette, when you were growing up, what did you want to be when you were growing up? Has it always been like art and design for you or something completely different, like school teacher? I don't know.
You know, it's like I lived in a small town, and so I really didn't know. The options were either work in the factory or work in the insurance company that insured the factory workers. That was pretty well the town I grew up in. So there wasn't much option there because I was just kind of a weird art kid from the get-go. So, but I told my parents when I was 8 years old that I wanted to go out to Hollywood and work for the movies. Now, at the time, I thought I was going to go out there and be a Bugsby Berkeley dancer, which is basically the background dancer for Fred Astaire and Ginger Rogers and that kind of stuff. Not thinking about the fact that these people, half of them are dead and the other of them, you know, these are black and white movies. They're not doing these anymore. So, you know, but that was my goal. So I took dance lessons and I got involved in musicals, and I was like driving hardcore towards being a dancer for musicals that weren't being done anymore. So, but on the side, I loved Hammer movies, the Hammer monster movies, and I would stay up till all hours of the night. We only had 3 channels. My parents wouldn't pay for cable, so we had 3 channels. It was very exciting when Fox went on the air and we got 4 channels. So pickings were slim, but nonetheless, I would stay up for it was called Dimension 13, which was the midnight monster thing in our town on Saturday nights, and I would stay up, and especially if they had one of the Hammer mummy movies. I love mummies. Don't know why. Mummy movies do not make sense. I have no idea why those people cannot get away from something walking that slow. They fall down a lot. They really need to work on dance lessons some more. But yeah. So I started doing kind of art. I was a crafts person, making puppets out of styrofoam balls and watching monster movies and taking dance lessons, kind of all over the place. And my parents let me do it.
I love that. You've got a point though. Like in horror, I love horror films. The amount of times I watch them, I go, "Why are you going up the stairs? Like, what? You're just doing this completely wrong. What are you doing?"
It's like every woman falls down,
Yeah,
and faints. Now, we ran a corn maze, a haunted corn maze for 14 years. If you look on a we eventually moved to a farm here. And if you live on a farm and you know how to make monsters, the obvious is you have to haunt a corn maze, So in haunting that maze, I finally got, so every year I would give a spiel to the ghouls before they went out into the field so that the rookies could get tuned in. And I warned them, I said, people are not responsible for what they do when they get scared. I said, some of them jump, some of them scream, some of them fall down. They will just flat out hit the deck. Some of them will stand there in place and freeze and do this. Just like in the movies, people really do that. I've seen them do it, where they just stand and don't move. It's very weird. I said, but some of them will swing. And if they punch you and the punch lands, then you're the one moving too slow. So, but yeah, there are people out there who just stand there and scream, or they will just hit the ground and curl up in a ball and lay there and wait for the monster to eat them. I've seen them do it.
That's incredible.
So as an education, anybody watching horror films should go ahead and go through a corn maze and observe victims, and then they'll realize that maybe it's not as dumb as it looks. Because people will walk themselves straight in. Don't open that door. They will.
That's what I'm missing in my life. I need to go to a haunted corn maze, and then it'll all make sense.
There you go. Life makes sense after that.
So you said, you were interested in movies and had this love since a very young age. Was it a particular film or cartoon or whatever it is that grabbed you at such a young age?
It was always Fred Astaire and Hammer Mummies. I don't know why those two things, but I would watch other horror stuff too, but I like monsters. I'm not as much into slasher films even today. I'm not as much into the slasher film as I am good old monsters, whether it's dinosaurs and sharks or whether it's aliens and boogie monsters, but I want monsters.
That's amazing. But obviously you moved to Hollywood at quite a young age. What was your plan when you got there? Because I'm sure it wasn't, where's Fred Astaire?
Well, no, but it was almost that stupid. Because see, one thing, it's going to come up in this for a few times, but I have discovered just a few years ago, I have improved myself to severe OCD. So when I was a kid and I told my parents I was going to go to Hollywood and work for the movies, that meant I had to go move to Hollywood and work for the movies, because otherwise I was a liar and they wouldn't want me. So my whole, once I got old enough to realize that Fred Astaire wasn't dancing anymore, I had to come up with an alternative method to get myself to Hollywood, because I could not be a liar. I had to go to Hollywood regardless of the dancing. So I started looking into studying fashion design so that I could go out and, being an arts and crafts kid, I thought I'd go out there and do beadwork, armor, fur work, that kind of stuff. So I was thinking something along the arts and crafts wardrobe line, because going out to Hollywood, you hear about all these people that are like, oh, I read Fangoria and I read Cinefex and all. I didn't know those existed. My town did not offer that. You went to the magazine rack at the drugstore, and what you got was Teen Beat and Archie Digest. You did not get monster magazines as an option. So I didn't know that was a job option. I knew that monsters weren't real, but I didn't know that it was even an option for people to do for a living. So I went out to Hollywood with one phone number, and that was technically two numbers, but the one guy, I don't even remember where I got the phone number from, and he was doing wardrobe costume type stuff in films, or so he said, and he ghosted me. He'd never answer the door or call me back or anything, so whatever. But the only other number I had was of a comic book illustrator who had a brother that I had made 1800s period suit for. So that was my full connection to Hollywood when I went out there, was a comic book illustrator that's brother I had an outfit for. And so I had been working at Lord & Taylor in Houston in the clothing department. And I thought, okay, so I saved up 3 months of survival money. And it was one of those things where I kept wanting not to go because it was scary. I knew I didn't have the connections. I didn't have a portfolio other than a couple of photos from what I had done at college on my internship, which did include some dancing potato chip bags, but whatever. And then I know I come back to that later if you want, but I'm telling you, I'm weird. Just smile and nod and go along.
Yes, Lynette. Yes.
Yes, yes. I'm perfectly safe. That's all I can assure you I'm safe. Um, but anyway, so I didn't have much of a portfolio. I didn't have the connections. I didn't have a place to stay. I didn't have a job. I didn't have anything. But I saved up 3 months of survival money from talking to this comic book illustrator. I found out what it would cost for rent and that sort of thing. So I knew about how much I would have to live on for 3 months, which back then was $1,000 a month. Was you could play. Um, and I went out there with everything I owned in the back of my parents' Cordoba, that Ricardo Montalban's little Cordoba, So I went out there with everything I owned in a Cordoba, and then apartment hunted once I got out there and found a place to stay, and then started job hunting with a 3 months to sink or swim rule. And so, yeah, I didn't have much of a plan when I went out there, except that I had to work for Hollywood. I could not go home a failure.
How was that transition, like going from a small, like you say, you only had 2 publications and you only had a factory and an insurance company, to go into LA?
Well, I had the advantage of my parents had moved to Houston right after I graduated high school, so I went to college in Dallas, Texas.
Okay.
So I had a little bit of transitional through civilized city, through the classic Texas polite southern city, but at least it got me used to driving in traffic and that sort of stuff. But at the time when I bought a car down there in Houston, I bought a 59 Ford. Now, nobody's going to take a 1959 Ford Classic that only had one other owner besides me. It hadn't even rolled over its first 100,000 miles. And so I left that with my parents and traded them cars, not on titles, but just temporarily borrow traded to take their Cordoba out there, because my dad was not about to let me take that 59 Ford out there until I had a place to park it beside the curb. Which was good, because the Cordoba did get totaled, parked on a curb. So, yeah.
Oh, wow. Okay. So your dad had your dad thought well on that idea. Yeah. Yeah. So you said you studied in Dallas. What did you study?
I studied fashion design. I actually have a degree in fashion design with no intentions of going into fashion when I got the degree. But I knew that the skill set that I would learn was going to be valuable. Whether you're making period clothing or whether you're making street clothes, you still have to have that same principle. So I did study for 2 years in Dallas and got an Associate's of Arts degree in fashion design before I went out there. So I went out to Hollywood when I was 20.
Wow. So you went to Hollywood at age 20, no real plan, just right, I've 3 months and I'm gonna do it. Yep. How the hell did you make this work? Because you obviously did it. You're here today to tell your story. You obviously did it. How did you make this work?
That one phone number was the magic ticket, because this comic book illustrator, when I went out there, and it was just by sheer, it's kind of like when you're writing a book. They always say you can start a story with coincidence. You can't end it on a coincidence. Well, coincidentally, since we're setting up the story, when I went out there, he said, a friend of mine's having a party in a couple of weeks. You should go to it. You might make some connections, but at the very least, you'll make some friends. So it's like, okay, I'll go to this party. I went to the party, and it was the who's who of monster makers. It was all of Steve Johnson, his crew, Greg Konnan, Rick Baker. I mean, it was the creme de la creme party that was being held in this like 2-bedroom apartment in North Hollywood, across from Hollywood High School. I mean, it was just a basic apartment building, but they had the doors standing wide open. Anybody could have wandered in, but I think anybody that didn't know what was going on would have been afraid to. But the door was standing wide open, and I just walked in, and it was the who's who of monster makers. And I'm standing there at this party, and I'm talking to people, and it took me a little bit to figure out who they were, what they had done, because having not read the magazines and stuff, I had no idea who these people were by name. But then all of a sudden I started realizing what they were talking about. And they were talking about Thriller and Starman and Greystoke and just, I mean, Dune and all this stuff that was being done. And I realized these people are making a living building monsters. They're actually doing arts and crafts and getting paid for it. So it's like I changed my career choice right then and there. And I left that party with 2 phone numbers that someone given me. And I just called those 2 numbers until somebody said yes and hired me.
That's
So,
incredible.
so if I hadn't had and I was terrified to go to that party, but if I hadn't had the guts to go ahead and show up at that party, who knows? I probably would have been back at Lord and Taylor in Houston, redressing the mannequins, but no.
That's incredible. It shows how it can pay off by just putting yourself out there and like putting aside your fears and just being like, nope, I'm going to talk to these people. I need to.
I mean, you have to, that one phone number. I mean, you can't go out there just completely in the dark, but so it's like you have to have something. But nowadays with the internet, it'd be so much easier to get that one friend, get that one person who might give you those tips. I was having to do it just by a couple of long distance phone calls at 10 cents a minute, but now it's so much easier to get those connections and people, and just the education you can get from before you even leave your house. You can have an entire portfolio. You can shoot short films. You can do a feature length. You could film something and have it completely stream Netflix before you ever left your bedroom. So it is a little different now because it's, in some ways it's more competitive because of that, because everybody has an opportunity no matter where they are in the United States. Whereas back then, the only people with the opportunity were the people that were pretty well standing in that apartment.
Yeah.
And the effects industry, even today, is still very, very tiny. Everybody knows everybody within no time at all. And so everybody would probably still fit at that apartment if you got them together. It's not much. It's still a fairly small group of people, but they're friends. I mean, if you're going to work the kind of hours it takes to work in the effects industry, you have to be friends with these people. So you can have the best portfolio in the world, but you still have to have made friends with somebody.
Yes.
Because nobody's going to work 60, 70, 80 hours a week with a stranger or a jackass. So you have to.
Yeah.
I mean,
it's important having those connections. We've spoken to people that work in the effects business before. Like we've had Steve Johnson on the show, Steve Laporte, and like they say, like you've got to have those connections because you might need something that you don't know how to do, but you're like, I know someone that does know how to do it, and it's that community.
That's the thing that people don't realize, especially when they're watching things like Face Off, which has a little bit of a false. Don't get me started on there, but anyway, you do not have to be a professionalist at everything, but you do have to be brilliant at something.
Yes,
you can be a great mold maker or a great sculptor or a great painter or without knowing how to do mechanics, or you can be a great mechanic without knowing how to, but you have to be willing to work as a team first and foremost, because the vast majority of the work out there is done under a team effort. You cannot let your ego get in the way and you have to be able to communicate. So I spent a lot of those years just on and off. I would do a little of everything. I had my main path that I was going for my skill set. And the fashion design degree really did help me a lot, because whether you're patterning a shirt or you're patterning a muzzle, it still seams. I foam fabricate. You're still instead of cutting fabric and sewing it together, I'm cutting foam and gluing it together, but it's the same principles of darting and seaming. And so the process did help. And so that's the direction I went, is into the foam fabrication, the figure finishing, the fur coverings, all that sort of stuff. But in the process, when my friends needed help in the middle of the night, meeting a deadline, I learned how to make a fiberglass mold. I learned how to run foam latex. I learned how to slush molds. I learned other skills that I am not nearly good enough to call myself a professional at, but it did help me to be able to communicate with the other departments and actually understand when they said, no, you can't do this. I understood why. I'm not asking for the moon out of the other departments. So it makes it much more cooperative. So you have to be brilliant at something, but a little bit of well-rounded knowledge in other departments so that you can cooperate with a team will make you a lot stronger.
It's an amazing industry. I absolutely love talking to people like yourself because I just find this whole industry absolutely fascinating. But we're talking about like you getting the foot in the door. According to IMDb, at least, the first project you worked on Jaws was Jaws 3D. Is that actually correct? Because I know how very incorrect IMDb can be.
No, it's actually Jaws 4, not 3D. They lie. But I've been trying to get that fixed. But yes, it was a Jaws movie, but it was The Revenge, not 3D. So it was the fourth one that I worked a little bit on for Ted Ray, doing like the core covers for. He was the stop motion genius back then, and so I was doing the core covers for them to run the skins on for his puppets, and I was doing like little miniature pieces for the boat that Jaws was going to attack, and so I was doing like miniature backpacks and miniature duffel bags and miniature all the fabric pieces that were going to be going on this boat. So it was just little bits, and that was just something I was doing in the evenings while I was working doing toy prototypes during my day job. So
that's awesome. It must be so weird creating like miniatures, like a little backpack. That must be a pain to do.
But you know what? This is where OCD is a big advantage, because when you have somebody like Ted Ray, because, okay, let's back up a minute. When you're doing stop motion, it's not doll clothes, it's miniature. And so if you make a mistake this big, it's going to be blown up to this big on the screen. And so every mistake shows in magnified for the whole world to see. So working towards perfection is a plus. So Ted Ray was the type of person that I swear he's got to be OCD and he just doesn't know it or won't admit it. But he would get out the calipers and measure my top stitching to make sure that my top stitching was to scale, so that every hem, every seam allowance, we would have real things there, and he'd go, okay, it's this wide, and so doing it at quarter scale, it has to be 16th inch. It has to be. So I had a sewing machine. It was this little antique featherweight sewing machine about this big, and it could do up to 35 stitches an inch with silk thread. So I could get the stitches tiny enough to scale on everything. And you have to match the fabric. You can't, if it's made out of canvas, you can't use canvas. It's too stiff. It'll look like it's made out of cardboard this big. So you have to try to find a fabric that will wrinkle to scale of canvas, or sand it from the back to thin it enough to wrinkle it to scale for canvas. So everything has to be calculated and nitpicked to the nth to get it to work stop motion.
Absolutely crazy. I mean, when you approach projects though, for the first time, or approach a project just in general, like, do you have a sort of way you always do things? Like, is it a case of, here's the brief, this is what I want, or do you go, oh, maybe we could do this and this? Like, how would you approach a new project?
Every project is different, and that's what makes it so fun. It's like thank God most people didn't say, have you built this before? Because the answer would almost always be no. But they would ask, can you build this? Well, yeah, if I thought I could, then yes. But first of all, when people start asking me what they want, my head's already running on how can I do this? What materials would I use? And then as they start saying what it needs to do, so many times people say, hey, can you build me this? Well, maybe. What do you want it for? Do you want it to be durable for live stage? Do you want it to be a one shot so that it's more about how it looks than survival? Do you need it to be able to get wet? Do you need it to fit a human? Do you need it to fit a dog? I've made a flight harness for a dog. It's like somebody, if they just come up and said, hey, can you build me a flight harness? Well, for a dog is a major thing, And the fact that it was going to be in a TV commercial, so I had to fur cover the flight harness so that it didn't look like the dog was wearing one. It's like you have to know everything about it. And the more information they give you, then you're going, oh, well, I did this before, but that's not going to work because they need it to do this. Fat suits are a prime example. I've built a lot of fat suits. But at one point I was building some and they needed to be very realistic. So it was a combination of foams and spandex, and can't use beanbag pellets because they make noise, and it was going to record, as opposed to being MOS, meaning without sound, where you could get away with some beanbag swish. Then there was the inflatable fat suits because they needed to start skinny and go poof on camera. And usually these things you want to be as lightweight and comfortable as possible because people are not used to wearing that much padding. It's hot. And under the stage lights, they're not always LED. And so the stage lights are hot and these suits get hot. And then your actor loses their energy. So you have to make them as breathable and lightweight and comfortable as you can, which isn't always the case when you start adding silicone to get that weight slug going. Well, then recently I had to build a fat suit for MrBeast for one of his challenges. And it was called Lose 100 Pounds, Earn $250,000. And the guy measured that was losing the weight. They got about halfway through his weight loss. He was lost about 50 pounds or so. And then they got this idea that it would be really cool to be able to put the weight back on him at the end so that he could feel his before and then his after.
That's really cool.
So not only did they want a fat suit, and by this time the guy was losing weight like it was going out of style. I mean, so there was this ticking time bomb of when he gets to that weight, we've suit done. Or who's this we? I have to have the suit done. So every week they were telling me how much weight he lost, so I knew running down the time. But that also meant that he was changing the whole time I'm building this. He's changing shape. So what they had to do was they had to give me his initial measurements and his body scans, and then the ones along the way, so that I could try to anticipate, based on his weight loss pattern, anticipate what his final shape would be, so I would know how to put the weight back on him, because they wanted it to be shaped like the original measure. So I already had his exterior measurements, but I was having to guess his interior measurements and anticipate them. And then they needed it to be exactly 97 pounds. So rather than as comfortable as you can, they wanted it to be shaped like him, but also add 97 pounds back onto him. So I had to try to find ways. So every project is like that. There's that, well, it's almost like this, but you have to do this. And then it becomes a whole new game every time.
Oh, that's incredible. I mean, as soon as I'd be told maths was involved, I'd be out, to be fair. I'd just like, no, I'm good. What a great idea as well. Like, that must have been mental for him to do.
It was really cool. If you haven't seen the episode, do watch it if you've watched MrBeast stuff, because it is one of the most emotionally touching episodes too. That the story arc to that thing, it blew my mind. And so I wanted to do that suit so bad for them. My son happened to be working on it, which is how I found out about it, because it's all closed and behind until it's done. But he called me up asking me if I'd be willing to do this suit. Because Mej went through some really hard times during that. And I just kept thinking, I want to do this for him. He needs this. He needs to feel that before and after. I'd not just put on something they bought at Amazon that's kind of funny. He needs to feel this. And so I wanted to give him that. So I was willing to negotiate to make sure that I fit their budget and their time frame. If I had to stay up all night, they were going to have that suit for him. So it's like, if you can watch that episode, it's really an impressive episode. And it's only, it's MrBeast. It's 25 minutes long or something, or not very long.
Let's find that, definitely. But obviously, I said at the start of this that you spin many plates, wear many hats, as it were, because you go from design to puppeteering to fabricating and stuff like that. How important is it for you to have your hands on a project as much as possible, instead of be like, I'll do this bit and then someone else can do that bit of it?
Well, it kind of goes both ways. I mean, that's how you can spin that many plates. Because if you are doing like all of it all the time, you can't do it. But I'd have that day job where I was invested. I was in the shop and I was working with the team and I was juggling things around. But then on the side, you can do like the stop motion stuff. That was always just side project stuff. But if on a major film, it always sounds like you're trying to push the directors and the shop owners. It's like, oh, you need me on set, you need me on set. But there is a valid point to that, because if I've built it for someone to wear, or a lot of times if it was a puppet and I'm done the figure finishing on it, if they don't take me to set, then who knows the best ways to get it repaired or to get it fixed or to adjust it or to, they just left the repair guy back at the shop or laid him off for another project. And then likewise, then for the performing, if I'm going to be on set anyway, if I'm a puppeteer, then the producers are already paying puppeteer, so you got your maintenance guy for free because I'm on, so it's a package of, if I build it, then I can also maintain it and dress in it or perform it or whatever and take it all the way through. So it can be a package deal. And so the big projects, I liked being a package deal. And then in the side projects, it was the little stuff that I was saying yes to just to have fun.
To be fair, if I was given an opportunity to chase Jeff Goldblum with a raptor puppet, I'd jump at it. So I don't blame you. Like, get involved.
But the glamour of Hollywood, even that wasn't all that glamorous. I mean, the whole time we're building these Raptors, they kept saying, oh, you're going to be going to Kauai. Everybody's going to Kauai. That's where they filmed before, and they're going to go back to Kauai. I ended up in a wheat field in Valencia, California, freezing my butt off in basically chin-high grass. I never got to see Kauai. The compies, those little guys, they got to go to Hawaii. They're telling us all about how lovely Kauai is. I'm in a wheat field freezing to death. So it's like the glamour of Hollywood.
Jeff, you're not worth this, goddammit. I mentioned Jurassic Park as well. Oh, sorry.
As I say, when we were on set when we got onto the sets where it was interiors, and we were down at the Universal Studios, we were shooting right next to where the Jurassic Park ride was. And so all day long, anytime the doors would open, we'd hear while we're, and it's like, so at the beginning of the day, it's very funny. You show up and you're greeted by but by about the 12th hour of I was over at the craft service table, and I was started to reach into this bowl of potato chips. This was back before COVID, when they'd actually have an open bowl of potato chips. I reached in this bowl, and another hand comes in, and it reaches down. And so I look up just to see who's on the other end of the hand, and it's Jeff Goldblum, and he's about this far from my face, and he goes, I just couldn't take it anymore.
That is an incredible story.
It's an iconic song, but my days, after that many times, you'd want us to start smacking your head against the wall, wouldn't you? Be way more exciting.
I mentioned Jurassic Park because you've worked on so many different projects. We can't possibly cover them all. So I was just looking through and I picked a handful and just be like, maybe what you worked on it, any fun stories from set, anything like that. Because I did want to start with Jurassic Park because, one, I'm a fucking huge Jurassic Park fan, but who isn't? But when it comes to the Raptors, did you look at like the first film, or did you like go, no, I want to go in and put my own?
Well, God, everybody looks at the first film. That's
what, you know what I mean?
Hey, that's what are you saying?
You know what I mean? Were you trying to like match that design or put your own spin on it? Is what I meant.
Well, it was still being done by Stan Winston Studios, who did the first ones. Now, I wanted to work on the first one, and I couldn't get an interview there to sweep the floors. It was driving me absolutely nuts. I was begging. I'd send my resume over there. I would call and ask them if they received it, and I couldn't even get an interview. So when I got hired over there, I got hired on The Relic, and then I was supposed to be there for 3 weeks max. It was supposed to be 2 to 3 weeks. Well, then after about a week and a half, Stan offers me a permanent position in the shop. So, yay! I finally got there with still having never interviewed, but I'm now a permanent staff member. So then after we finished a relic and we got on to address the Lost World, and Chris Swift comes in and says, you're going to be on my team doing the Raptors. And I'm thinking, dang it, I don't want to do the Raptors. They're already done. They're, big deal. All I'm going to do is refurbish the existing puppets. And he's like, no, you don't understand. He said, Steven loves the Raptors and he hated the puppets because they didn't move well. So we're going to, since the sculpture's done, the exterior's done, we're going to go back to the drawing board and start from scratch because everything else is still in clay. We have the advantage of having, our body far enough along. We can redesign. And then what we ended up designing got applied to the Packies and even to the T-Rexes and everybody else then, based on the technology that we developed. So we went back to the drawing board and the only thing they kept was the exterior sculpture mold. We went back and the mechanics, redid all the mechanics. And I told them they have to fit within the body form because that's really hard. There was so many mechanics in there that seriously getting them to understand that they can't just go to the edges. They have to go in far enough to give room for skin and muscles and shells. And those poor mechanics, we were torturing them to try to get them to compress them. But meanwhile, we went back and I was so thrilled by this point as how much Chris was actually asking my advice. I was part of the conceptual team. And so we went back and we remarked the inside of the mold so that the core, the thickness of the skin wasn't just a skin. It actually got thicker in places where you wanted it to be, smooth, and then got very thin where it needed to move. So it had more stretch. And so we went back and re-record the entire skin to different thicknesses. And then we went back to the body, which had a hard shell, a carbon fiber shell, and cut it into pieces and equated it like a skeleton. And then from there, I started designing it like it was a body. And I used the shell for skeletons, for bones. And then I used foam and spandex and elastic and rivets and stuff to equate muscles and tendons and ligaments so that the thing actually had anatomy as opposed to just robot with joints. It had anatomy. And so then when we put the skin over it and I attached the skin to the joints and the muscles, it would allow, with those muscles gliding on the bone, instead of it just buckling, it could redistribute just the way your muscles do with your skin. So the whole thing was attacked like it was a live creature instead of a robot with shells. And that was derived from having worked on the relic, because on the relic, when I walked in the door, they basically flopped a big fiberglass shell on the table and said, this needs to be a suit. And I'm like, it's a fiberglass shell that looks like a Volkswagen lady. I mean, we're talking enormous. And they're like, this is a man in a suit. And I mean, it's the whole thing like this. The only thing missing is the head. And so the theories that I came up with to break down that fiberglass shell and turn it into a suit was exactly the type of process that I did on the Raptors then. But instead of having a man in a suit, it was the mechanics in the suit, but it was still built with the same suit principles on the mechanics. And then those were applied to the compies, the stegosaurus, like the neck and a lot of those kind of the jointing. It was applied all the way through then on the other dinosaurs as well.
That's unbelievable. Like, especially when did that come out? What, 1996, 7? Like, to think that technology back then, is, you think about technology now compared to then, like, to have it move that way back then is unreal.
Yeah. And so there was so much of it that the only thing a Raptor couldn't do was hold its own weight. So it was mounted it had a T-post mounted up, but that thing could move any joint, any toe, any cheek muscle. I mean, the amount of mechanics that those guys put into this thing was just phenomenal. And some of it was programmed, but a lot of it was programmed with ups, but it was all then on set, puppeteer on demand, so that Steven could ask it to do anything and we could just get it to do, but it took several puppeteers working in sync. But it was Chris who coordinated the project, me who had done the figure finishing, Rich Hogan who had done the mechanics. I mean, the team was built. The puppeteers were the team that built it and knew it inside and backwards and sideways. Were the ones that then went to set and performed it. So we were able to. Those were our babies, you know.
I mean, that would scare the pants off you, wouldn't it? If you could see a raptor moving that real, you'd be like, "Oh, jeebus! What is like?" It just almost like I don't want to be near it. Thanks. I think I'll stay over here.
Yeah, they were that dangerous too. They were scary and they were dangerous when they had the stuntman in and they were rehearsing one of the stunts with the T-Rex. They made everybody leave the room except for just the essential people that had to be there. No distractions, no anything, because those things, that T-Rex knocked someone off of the scaffold, turned its head and knocked her clear off the scaffolding. I mean, the jaw bite on the Raptors is 1,400 PSI, meaning 1,400 pounds per inch. And they had dental acrylic teeth, which is the same thing they make dentures out of. So it could crush your hand. It could bite your hand and crush them. So it's like they were not toys. They were not to be doodled with. They were serious dinosaurs.
Wow.
The only thing they couldn't do was actually chase you down because they had a pole up their behind. But
the one that really got, sorry, Joe, to jump in really quickly. The one that really got me, so I had to go and buy Small Soldiers because I love that film and I haven't seen it for decades. I had to get it in my collection. But Mouse Hunt, I genuinely thought that mouse was real. Genuinely.
It was sometimes. They had 13 or 14 mice. Here's the thing about Mouse Hunt. Because again, we're over at Stan's. We're starting over. You know, when you were talking about a project and how do you do it, we didn't even know what material to make it out of. Mice are like water balloons. They don't have, they have a spine, but I don't know where it goes because they end up being this long and this long in the same mouse. And they wanted that the budget was tight enough. They had the budget for one puppet. So we had to make that puppet able to do this. I mean, it had to be able to curl up in a ball and then stretch out. And speaking of mechanics, that thing had nose wiggle, cheeks, lips, jaw, eye squints, blinks, eye turns. That head was about this big. And it had all these mechanics in it. So, because again, it was just a radio controlled puppet with my hand up inside it. It was a hand puppet body. I actually had to bind my hand to get it small enough to fit inside. So I was the main body, and then they were puppeteering, radio control puppeteering the arms and the head with my hand inside it. And there was one scene when the nail gun comes through the wall and almost impales that was that puppet, and that was so scary because they had that nail, this giant nail is about so big around because of the scale. They had that nail on a pneumatic cylinder so that it could actually blast through the wall. And my hand is on the other side of that wall with the only puppet in existence on it. And they're saying, okay, get the timing right, because when that thing starts coming through, you need to pull back just in time, or that nail is going to take that puppet's head out and your hand besides it. And so it was they had 3 walls. We had 3 takes that we could do. And so the first one, naturally, I pull back too soon. I'm like,
yeah,
as you would.
So it's like we had to rehearse it several times as to how far back for me to go so that I didn't pull back, and there was a wall behind me, so I couldn't go too far, but I had to be sure to get back far enough because that was a preset stop on that nail, and there was no other option. It was done in real time. It was not slow motion or something like that. It was real time. So
wow,
God,
love that film.
It is a great.
I love that film. That was probably the most fun I ever had on a set. Was that film? Gore Verbinski. I understand why he and Johnny Depp wanted to just keep making pirate movies in the island so that they could play, because Gore Verbinski loves to play. He's a blast. He loved the puppets. Most directors are trying to figure out how not to use the puppet as much, or not to use the. No, he was all about what else can we get it to do. The cat puppet and the mouse puppet, he was all about them. So he was adding stuff, and it was fun. It was fun.
Stories like this are exactly why we love talking to people like yourself, because you watch the film and you don't have any appreciation for that, because the whole point is to not see that there is someone's hand inside that mouse. You're supposed to believe it's a mouse. So, it's not appreciated what you guys do as you watch the film. It's when you hear stories like this that you're like, my God, the work that goes into this is insane.
When we were building that mouse, that we built the mouse. They had cast the mouse. They actually had a hero mouse, and then they had cast like 12 or 13 other mice that matched it, so that they had identical little mice. And because a mouse can only learn, I guess, one trick. So they had one mouse that could go steal fruit, and they had one mouse that could run this obstacle course, and one mouse that could run. So each mouse was taught one blocking trick. Okay. So they were all identical. So we had turnarounds. You have to match this mouse. And we worked so hard on that. And Shane and Paul, and we were just beside ourselves, making sure that this mouse matched that mouse. And we could put them we photographed it and put them side by side. And man, we matched that mouse. We were so proud. So we went to set for a test shoot day. And oh my gosh, it was the only time I've ever seen Stan mad. And he was appalled. He could not figure out how we thought this thing was ready to shoot. How embarrassing if it wasn't ready. We should have said something. We could have rescheduled, blah, blah, blah. And Shane is just beside himself. It's like, we matched the mouse. We pulled up photographs of the Polaroids, and we're showing him. It's like, we matched the mouse. Really, we matched the mouse. And then Stan looks at it, and he takes the Polaroids over. And the next thing you know, everybody's coming back. Mice's lifespan is so short that in the time it took us to build the puppet, the mouse had aged out of his role, and he no longer matched his photos.
What?
So they had to recast the mouse, which meant they had to retrain a new mouse. So hence the puppet got used quite a bit because they couldn't close up match the mice for very long.
What a weird problem to have.
I know.
Every film has its own challenges. Everything is different every time. You got to roll with
it. You are also part of a franchise that is very near and dear to my heart. You are part of the Star Wars universe, making possibly the most adorable creature in the entire Star Wars universe in creating Neil for Skeleton Crew.
Well, no, I didn't do Neil. I did his mom and dad. Neil's mom and dad.
I do apologize. I must have read that wrong.
I know. And there was so much more that was shot of them that didn't make the film, and so it's like I wanted them to use more because that whole family is so adorable.
It really is.
I mean, it really is. And so I was thrilled to be able to work on it because it's like, and that one was fun too because it just by that point. Alan, who runs Legacy, the people that own Legacy Effects are the reason it's called Legacy is they are the legacy of Stan Winston. They are the original, some of the original people who worked side by side with Stan all those years. And so when Stan passed, they took over and created Legacy Effects. So Alan had known me since way back in the dinosaur, way back when dinosaurs ruled the earth. And I had to, sorry. So that for something like Skeleton Crew, where it's just basic muscle suits, he could just turn me loose. So they just gave me the body. They gave me the body form of the actor. They gave me the drawings and turned me loose to build the bodies. And those were so much fun because those, to me, those are not scary. They're just fun. Yeah. At this point, building any shape of body is just kind of fun.
That's what I love about your work, though, because there's so many different things to it. Like you've got creepy things like dinosaurs and like things for Relic and things like, but then you've got a giant pair of shoes for Honey I Blew Up the Kids, and you've got like this adorable elephant type creature for Skeleton Crew. Yeah. It's like I absolutely love it. It's amazing. But I know you're.
the contrast of my career has just been a blast the whole time.
It's incredible. And you are I don't know if you can talk about this, but I'm gonna ask because if I don't ask, I don't get. I know you are work or have worked on Mandalorian and Grogu. Are you allowed to say anything about what you worked on?
No, other than I will say that I only worked on little bits of because I do at this point I long distance commute in. I do not live in California.
Mm.
So I fly out there and work for Legacy in bits. They'll fly me out for a project. Like they flew me out for a few weeks to build the Dust Bunny or they filled it. So this one was just kind of a quick in and out type of thing where I was only there for a brief amount of time to help out with stuff, and that's about as far as I can say. I'm all I can say is I'm hoping it ends up not on the cutting room floor, you know.
Oh God.
So it wouldn't do any good to talk about it anyway because you don't even know what's in the film because I don't know either. I can't wait to see it myself.
So excited for it. I really am.
Are there any projects? Because obviously, like you say, you spin many plates, sinks, kitchens, houses, that sort of thing. Is there any project that's really pushed you out of your comfort zone when you've gone, I'm not sure I'm going to be able to, like anything you've gone, I'll give it a go?
Well, this guy.
Ah.
This is actually a replica. I got Terry Hardin was an Imagineer, and she was working for Disney, and they needed some stuff built for Tokyo Disneyland. But since she was working on a different part of a different department, she was not allowed to bid it because that would have been a conflict of interest for her to work for two different Disney departments.
Yeah.
Whatever. So she called me in on it, and then I hired her to work in the evenings with me. So the two of us built basically the Calmarley alien for the Star Tours ride for Tokyo Disneyland. So we had the first project we did was Pan Galactic Pizza Parlor, and it was some puppets. And what they were doing was we built these puppets, and I call them junk puppets because they were built out of everything from curtain rod rings and hair dryer hoses, and they were a blast. and we puppeteered them speaking in Japanese, and they were recorded, and then they were played. So when you were standing in the queue at Pan Galactic Pizza Parlor, they had Tony, this guy this alien who owned the parlor, and these were the customers calling in, the different phone calls he was getting on this video call. Now, bear in mind, this was before video calls were a thing, but anyway, so he was making video calls. So then, while the day we brought those in to start the first day of puppeteering, another guy comes in and says, I need a calamari alien, and I need a hand puppet of it for Tokyo Disneyland for the Star Tours queue. Same type of a thing, when they were going to video it to talk to the robots. And I'm like, yeah, this sounds like fun. I'm game. And I'm looking over at Terry, and she's like, yeah. And so it's like, okay. And he's like, if you could get me a bid sometime in the next few days, and yeah, we can do this. Okay. And so then when he leaves the room, Terry leans in and she goes, so how do you think we're going to make this? I'm like, I don't know. You kept nodding, so I thought you knew. So she's like, well, you acted so confident. I thought you knew. So, but he did. He worked out. So I made myself one. So.
Oh, that's incredible.
But yeah, usually I'm pretty good at winging it. Working on Tank Girl, it was a budget control thing, so they only sculpted one Ripper suit. So every single actor and every single stunt man, it was one body form, and we had to make it fit everybody without wrinkling. The problem is they hired people from 5'9" to 6'4" or 5", ranging from 140 pounds to about 240 pounds to all fit the same foam latex suit. So that one was a real case of faking it.
That's absolutely mind-blowing. I love Tank Girl. It's one of my favorite films, and they all look so very distinct and unique. You never would have known that. That's blown my mind.
Yeah, they had one foam latex suit. It was Tony Gardner's over at Alterian, and they had actually brought me in to build the gorilla for what's it called? It was called Katie, and then I think it became Born to Be Wild or vice versa. So I was building a silverback gorilla for him, and I'm over there minding my own business. And he says, "Hey, Lynette, can you come over and take a look at this?" And they had somebody in the suit, and the suit just fit horribly. It was, I mean, it was baggy and it was way too big for this poor guy. And he's like, "Any ideas on how to fix this?" And so he's like, "At this point, do whatever you want to it." So I just started with the scissors hacking up this foam latex suit and altering it like it was clothing. Hence, fashion design comes into play again. And so every single actor that came in, we had to do fittings on them and hack the foam latex suit apart, alter it, and then put it together, add pieces in, whatever, so before they were painted then, so they could be patched and painted and look and fit well. So, and then that education applied when I went over and worked on Species, which happened to be right on the heels of that, working on Species for Steve Johnson. Ended up doing the same thing to that foam latex suit for Dana He in order to keep that. So, because I mean, that had to look like skin, that you couldn't have a buckle. I mean, it was merciless. No buckles allowed, no closures allowed. So,
it's mad. It's like no 2 days are the same in this job, it seems.
no.
If you could just indulge me with one more of your projects that you've worked on, because I don't know if many people have ever asked you about this one, because it's very niche. Me and Tom are very big wrestling fans. Myself particularly, I love 90s wrestling. And you designed Max Moon. Like, no one knows about Max Moon. It was there for such a short time. How on earth did you get involved in this?
Max Moon.
It was a professional wrestler. It was
Konnan. Oh, is that blue robot?
Blue robot guy.
That's the blue robot.
Okay. Blue robot guy. Okay. See, that's how unknown he is. The person that kind of didn't know who it was.
I knew it was Konnan. I didn't, I didn't know if it ever saw the light of day, honestly.
I think Konnan wore it once and then someone else wore it. So.
Oh, wait, did you happen to have footage of that? I've never seen it in action. That's one of only 3 projects I've ever been stiffed on in my life for pay.
Really?
Yeah, maybe. Hey, if anybody's watching this, pay me. But
I mean, the guy in charge of the company back then probably isn't very good to talk to now. So yeah.
No, they. No. Yeah, but okay, Konnan.
Yeah,
I can get
Konnan.
you there.
Yeah.
Well, maybe I can find something on it now that I know what it's called. Look at me. Huh. Thanks for that.
No problem. But how did you end up making wrestling gear?
That was another one of those midnight jobs. It was actually Cleve Hall, who ended up doing the series Monster Man for a couple of years. It was his job, and he was a procrastinator and usually on cocaine and whatever else. But he was a dear friend. He was a great guy. And he got behind on the deadline, and he called me up and he's like, "Can you help me with this thing?" And so I was working a day job, so I would go over there to his apartment. I mean, his living room floor was covered in cardboard because he's fiberglassing in this white carpeted living room. And so shh, don't tell.
I won't, I promise.
So yeah, it was actually a sheet foam fabricated suit, and we just laid the fiberglass over the outside of it. So when it was done, it was already foam lined because it was a foam suit with a fiberglass skin. But yeah, no, I'm going to have to go look at it now. You got me all excited.
I just love the fact I told you about it and you had no idea what I was on about. It's brilliant.
Because there were so many of those jobs. Like I said, I'd have the day job and then I'd be doing anywhere from 3 to 5 side projects in the evenings. I'd be, juggling deadlines or whatever. So there's a lot of them. They like whipped out the door, or I would just in a shop and they'd run it over my table going, "Hey, can you make me something for this?" And I wasn't really paying attention. It was like, yeah, just, throw me a few bucks. And and so it would be years later and I'd see a poster going, "Oh, that's what I worked on. That's what I did." And I'd have to watch the movie to see what it was that I did. And it's like, well, by golly, there it is. I do something on that movie. There it is, right there on the screen.
It's like the centerpiece of the movie. I had no idea.
Like Jamie said, you've worked on so many unbelievable projects. Like we mentioned, Jurassic Park, Beetlejuice, Mars Attacks. You've worked for Nintendo, Jeff Dunham, Disney World. Like, do you have like a particular favorite medium that you like to work in, or is it whatever comes your way? It's a challenge, and we're going to have fun with it.
That's kind of it. I mean, everything that I have is of the same medium. It's all foam. It's all foam and fur or feathers, whatever the finish is. But the understructure is going to be usually foam involved, whether it's foam carved, whether it's foam sheet foam sculpted, whether it's rigid foam carved, it's soft foam carved, it's sheet foam, it's either Scott foam or mattress foam or L200. But it's always some kind of a foam thing that'll then also involve some spandex or elastic or whatever else. But it's always foam. I do not know how to sculpt in clay, really. I mean, I could probably push it around, but I can't really. I don't know how to do like makeup appliances. I know the theory behind it. I know about the clay and how to make the mold and how to run silicone on it, but I can't do it. I'm not a clay person. I'm a foam person. They call me because they want foam.
But like we were saying, you've done so many incredible things. We can't touch on barely any of it. We can barely scratch the surface. But it's a good thing that you have your own book to tell all these incredible stories, which you can see right behind you there. Weird. What made you decide to write a memoir?
A lot of nagging from a publisher is what it comes down to. I mean, people, I'd go to, when I'm sitting there talking to people and I'd have these behind the story, I remember when stories and stuff like, oh, you need to write your memoir. And I'm thinking, this is all fun party fodder to sit and entertain you with for a little short stories here and that, but to sit and read a bunch of just vignette, I remember whens. Every effects guy has them, but I don't know that many fans that read it, And so I thought, so I just put it off for years. And everybody has kept saying, oh, you need to write your memoir. You need to write your memoir. Well, then finally I was at a writer's conference because I had decided that I want to be a novelist when I grow up. And so I was at this writer's conference and a publisher, a guy affiliated with a publishing house, he says, you need to write your memoir. And I'm like, I hear that a lot and no, thank you. And he wouldn't let it go for, talking months, to the point where he and his wife, when they were going from New England down to Texas, they drove and visited at my house just so that he could see my shop and tell me more about, I need to write my memoir. So finally, since he wasn't going to let go of it, I kept thinking, well, what do I have to say? I mean, why? I mean, I'm not a shop owner. Nobody knows me by name. When I go to conventions, for the longest time, my banner behind me for Lynette Eklund, I finally made a sign that said, who? Because nobody knows who I am. They know my work, but they don't know who I am. And so I actually did a coloring book, and it was a bio coloring book with like pictures of some of the stuff I worked on. I drew, and then on the next page, it would have a little short thing of what I did on it. And I called it cool. Lynette Eklund Who? Because it's like, nobody knows who I am. So I thought, why am I going to write this memoir? I thought, well, first of all, I'm a female monster maker, which is very rare in itself. There's not really that many people in the effects industry to begin with. And especially back then, there were very, very few females. I mean, I would work in a shop and I'd be the only female in the building. Or there might be one other one over in a corner somewhere, but there was very few of us. And it was a very male-dominated profession, and it was very Peter Pan back then, too. So it was the titty girls in the bathroom. There was one bathroom, and it was going to have a titty girl calendar in it, and that was just because they weren't used to they were not used to girls being in their fraternity house.
Yeah.
So there was that, and I survived. But also, because I wanted to be a novelist, I had started looking into a lot of the agents and stuff started asking what they wanted stuff from neurodiverse people. I thought, what's neurodiverse? It's such a fancy word and you hear it all the time, but what is it? I knew that autistic people were neurodiverse, but what else? And so then I started looking and thought, oh, OCD. Well, I've always kind of joked I'm a little OCD. And then I started reading. And I realized that I'm not just a little OCD. I'm like swan diving off of a cliff of OCD, just uncontrolled, I have since been to a behavioral therapist who specializes in neurodiverse behaviors, who what he told me was, I'm impressed you've been able to make yourself uncomfortable enough to function as well as you do.
Okay.
In other words, there's no way in the world that you should be able to handle life the way you are, as whack job as you are. I mean, um, people think, and I say that with all good heart to anybody else with OCD,
No.
I feel you, because people think about the movie series Monk, the detective that was very quirky and very OCD, and he was always like straightening people's papers, and he would line up the books, and they think about all this neatnik stuff. And that's what I thought OCD was. I thought that that's all it was. I did not realize that there was mental OCD. And that's what I have in spades, in all kinds of forms. And so it messes with my head every day, all day, from the time I get up to the time I go to bed. I have to negotiate with my head to keep it from driving me into a corner of suppression. And so I realized that that's what I needed to say. I needed to be honest about what's going on in here. And so all of my film career, I can attribute to OCD. I now consider myself OC, but not D. I actually have stickers written that say OC, but not D, because I don't consider myself disordered anymore. I'm still very obsessive compulsive. Oh yeah, in so many ways. I grew up with, I had an eating disorder that I didn't realize I had for probably 17, 18 years, because OCD was making me scared of food. But and my mom, apparently at one point, she admitted later, she had even taken me to the doctor to see if I was anorexic or bulimic or something. And the doctor just shrugged and was like, well, if she gets hungry, she'll eat, because I wasn't filling any of the boxes right, because OCD wasn't being recognized as being able to cause an eating disorder. But I was flat out, I had in my head, I was scared of food. I was scared of sugar. I was scared of eating. So so the OCD runs very deep and in all kinds of different angles. But that same OCD that terrorized me in my head all the time is also what made me successful at my career. I can attribute for that matter, that little voice that says, you have to go, you have to try to do this, you cannot not try. That was the voice of OCD telling me that I was not allowed to fail. So if it hadn't been for the OCD, I probably never would have left Texas and tried. And I certainly wouldn't have been able to work as hard as I have and be as organized as far as deadlines and troubleshooting and all the way my head works. I can attribute that a lot to the OCD. So when I moved back to the Midwest, in my spare time, I'm still working full time. FedEx knows me well, and so does Southwest Airlines. But I started directing. Well, we ran the Haunted Corn Maze. I love teens. We ran that for 14 years. I love working with the teens. We had literally hundreds of teens from 3 different counties in our yard for 7 weeks a year. So about the time we knew we were going to retire that, I started directing the high school plays. And working with the teens over there, I started realizing how much anxiety and how much depression, but especially that anxiety. And I wonder, it's like, how many of those kids are OCD and don't know it? Didn't know it. If I had had the added pressure of the internet when I was a high schooler with the amount of OCD in my head, I don't know if I would have ever survived. I don't know if I would have made it. And so it's like, I hope that maybe in the fun of reading the behind the scenes stories, they'll also maybe recognize themselves or recognize somebody that they love or understand a friend that's OCD and realize that there's so much more to it than just straightening things and organizing things and washing your hands a lot. Yes, those are also OCD, but those are only a few of the features. So the guy who had me that pushed me into writing this book, he's like, well, can you keep it 50-50? I want the Hollywood. I'm like, but I want OCD. He's like, okay, you can have them both. So this book, I was as honest as I could, because with OCD, I can't be any other way. I'm not allowed to steal credit. I'm not allowed to lie. I'm not allowed to exaggerate. It's not allowed. So I'm as honest as I can about my experiences in Hollywood. I share the stories on how things are built, my relationships with my coworkers, what it was like to be directed by Steven Spielberg, and what it was like to sit and hang out with Ben Kingsley, and what it was like to meet Michael Jackson. And all that stuff is in this book. But then along with that is how that OCD affected each one of these jobs. How did it play into it? How was it where did it try to corner me? How did I work my way out of it? And how did it turn out to be my benefit? So at this point, I am OC, not D, because the OCD has been my superpower to succeed in the job I've got.
That is phenomenal. That is phenomenal. Absolutely phenomenal. And you're right. To be fair, majority of people, when they think of OCD, they think shuffling papers, turning the light switch on and off 10 times, or things like that. They don't know the other side of it. I don't know the other side of it. I learned a lot just from this brief conversation we just had about it. So, the fact you want to use your platform to spread awareness of that, as well as telling some fun stories from your career, is admirable and amazing. And I think it's brilliant.
Thank you. I don't think that it has to be a serious subject. I mean, to me, for me, it's just like, I've got brown hair, I've got blue eyes, I have OCD. It's a character trait. I don't say I am OCD, because I am not. I have it.
Yes.
It's a trait. It's a character trait. It's the way, it's my thought process, So I don't think it's anything that needs to have to be serious and heavy and scary and psychologically analytical and all this. Just I equate it a lot to, like, not to belittle, but like alcoholism or anything else. If you don't know that you're an alcoholic and you get around booze, it's going to win every time. But if you know you're an alcoholic, then you recognize that tease and you can defy it. And then it loses its power. And that was it for me. It's like, once I realized what was driving the thoughts, and a lot of my thoughts, I've realized if I can find the origin story of that thought, it takes a lot of its power away. It's like, oh, that's just my head playing with that theory. So it's like finding the origin of a lot of my obsessive thoughts kind of deflates them a little bit. It doesn't make the thought go away, but it takes away a lot of their power from controlling me.
Absolutely. So it's amazing. It really is. Mr. Stevens, do you have any more questions for our wonderful guest?
I do. I mean, I don't know how we're going to follow that.
No. We're setting the bar.
But I do have one last question to ask you, Lynette, which is, what legacy are you hoping to leave behind? Like, did you ever think that this is where your life would be? Granted, we just had the OCD conversation, but
what legacy do I leave behind? My thing is, I love teens. I love young people, that teenager through the early mid-20s, when you're fearless and you want to take on the world and you have that chance. I hope that I'm inspiring people to dare to try. It's like, but that means that you have to think about consequences. You can't spend your teenage years partying to the point that you forget to get an education. You have to chase a dream. You have to have a dream, and don't tell anybody that you can't. I was in a little factory town in Illinois before there was internet, and I ended up building monsters in Hollywood. You can do it. You can do anything, but you have to dare to try. You have to, no matter how silly that dream sounds, you have to keep your dream, but you have to have a plan on how you're going to try to make that dream happen. You can't just wait for it to fall out of the sky at you. So if I have any legacy, I hope I'm inspiring some people to dare to try to follow their dream, because I think a lot more people can catch their dreams than they believe themselves if they would just have a plan, And you have to, life is going to come along and life's going to change that plan. I didn't know I was going to be a monster maker, and change of plans. And then once we had kids, I didn't think I would ever live on a farm in the Midwest again. Change of plans. And when I moved back here, I thought for sure that was going to be the death of my career. Well, guess what? Change of plans. You flex with it, but that doesn't mean you have to kill the dream. It just means that you alter it to fit the way life is taking you, and you can still have your dreams. So if anything, I hope that I'm inspiring to people to dare to try and not be afraid, no matter how silly your dream has, to at least take a shot, come up with a plan and take a shot.
Look at that. We said how you're going to top that, and then boom, you top it. Lynette, how can people find you out in the world? Plug social medias, websites. Where can people see what you're up to going forward?
Well, I have one more plug I want to make, and that's for the movie Buddy that'll be coming out in September. I spent 3 months working on that one. It was a low budget film. It went to Sundance and just blew up. It's a horror film called Buddy. Amazing. And look it up on the internet. I'm not going to say anything more than what the internet's saying about it, because this is one that the less you know, the more fun you will have. But just know that it is really demented in all the right ways. You will be laughing at stuff that you should be ashamed that you're laughing at.
No, that's how you sell a movie. I'm looking forward to that now.
It is dementedly dark. I loved it. I fought and begged to be a part of that project. So I ended up building the main suits for it. I puppeteered on it. I wore one of the suits in it. And it's like, Buddy, comes out Labor Day weekend. You got to see it. And it would be best to see it in the theater, just because I think that the audience is not going to be able to stay quiet. It's a thing. So now, yeah.
I look forward
Let's
to that.
just say it's what would happen if Barney was actually a psycho.
Sold.
But
Yeah.
but one of the critics that I read said it best, in that they said that it's what a lot of these other films were trying to do. You have your Willy's Wonderland, you have your Five Nights at Freddy's, all this kind of stuff. But this one's an original. It's not a derivative of an existing character. It's not a derivative of a game. It is its own thing with its own world and its own storyline. And the critics said that this is what the other films were trying to do, but this time they got it right. And it's
wow.
To me, that says it all.
That's a damn good review.
Yeah. Anyway, you can find me easily on Instagram under Lynette Eklund. I try to pretend I'm a TikToker. I suck at it, but I'm trying to learn how to do better. And you can look up Lynette Eklund. It's the right one if it says OCD Monster Maker. Facebook, Lynette Johnson Eklund or Lynette Eklund. But then also I have two websites. I have LynettePortfolio.com. And that's where you can see my full resume. And if I ever get around to putting the rest of the pictures up, it'll have a photo album. Right now, there's probably about 30 photos or so, but the full resume is there. I do keep the resume up to date. And then also I have the book website, which is EklundBooks.com. That's EKLUND, EklundBooks.com. Where you can read about Weird, and you can find out where it's sold, because it's sold globally. It's over in London too. I have global distribution with the publisher. So you can buy it at all retail places and online and all that stuff. And you can find out more about the book on EklundBooks.com. And both of those sites have links to each other. So if you only remember one or the other one, they'll both get you there.
Incredible. Absolute genius. Lynette, this has been so much fun. Thank you so much for taking the time out of your very busy schedule to sit and chat with us. It's meant everything. I've loved it. Absolutely loved it.
Thank you. I've had a great time. You guys are wonderful.
Stop it.
and
Carry on.
And my daughter-in-law is from England, so maybe one of these days we'll actually meet in person.
Oh,
yes.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Definitely stay in touch.
Yeah, 100%. That'd be incredible. Definitely has to be done.
I was over a couple of years ago working on a film there, and as far as I'm concerned, London is just a figment of everybody's imagination. I didn't see London at all. They landed, they took me to the outskirts to a small village. I shot, went back. I never saw any bridge. I never saw any tower. I never saw any castle.
It's definitely there, I promise you. It's definitely there.
Really? Okay. You say so.
You just have to hold us to it.
All right.
When you're over here next, we'll take you. But look, it's there. It's real. It's real.
Have an absolutely wonderful rest of your day. Look after yourself. Lynette, thank you so much. Take care of yourself. We'll speak to you soon.
Thank you.
Take care, Lynette.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Truthful lies.